Inside Story Uganda, real source of political updates.
Kyokuba nti nno waliwo omukungu eyakubiddwa n'abanga yafudde naye nga osanga badde bulagija vuubwe okuba nti yakoze akabenje kwa bodaboda n'abanga ate bamaze nabo ne babanga bakola divenji yaabwe bingi ebibaddewo era nga tugenda tufuna n'ensonga y'okuba nti nno omupriest Reverend Father Mugisha ow'e Masaka yavaayo n'akolokota gavumenti mu kaseera k'akalulu n'agamba nti abantu balonde NUP polisi yamutaddeko emisango gy'obutemu ayina omubbi gwe yasanga agenda kuba nti atwala emmotoka ye naye era father menyini era kati agenda kubanga ensonga ezo naye okuba nti nno omukulu Kopolo David Sali tumanyi bulungi yakuba omusajja era Sebulime Ronald Sebulime mu nsonga za minister yali former minister Nantaba yasindikiddwa mu nkoma male emyaka 2 beddu twatulina ensonga ezo okuba nti era waliwo ne bail reforms ezigenda okuba nti cabinet yaziyisizza Kanyehamba agamba nedda agenda kuba President Museveni mu mbuga n'ekina ky'NRM tatandikirawo mukulu Tamale awo nyinyi tatandikira
studio yaffe enyumye nnyo
studio yenye onekane
nze mbagamba tambula n'akantu kange kana akagolo kange covid tagenda kuggwawo nkya
omanye ebiseera bisinga
kasola abasajja abo abazungu kati kasaba HIV bwe yajja factory ezikola condom zavaawo bakansalers baavaawo
webali
you see once something becomes commercial bali abasajja abazungu abedda abaleeta PPF nattenzi kusibe bano kakati ensi yonna gitulya mu international community yonna buli omu abiseeko
bukiri
ate mbabuulira nno nti obusiraamu bwalibanga yeddiini entuufu kubanga nagenda e Vatikano buli mukazi yeebikkirira ng'agenda okulaba paapa kakati abasiraamu ababiikira beebikkirira bikira means an Arab word meaning a virgin bikira Maria era Abu Mayanja yagenda ku mukolo gw'abavubuka abasiraamu n'abaga nti muwasa ababiikira olupapula lwa muno ne lumuwaabira mu kooti n'ayinterpretinga nti ekigambo bikira kitegeeza virgin I need not direct my Muslim youth
okugenda mu bigoba babajjeyo
bamuliwo emitwalo egi kereziya zasonda nsonde n'azimbamu ennyumba yerungujja Abu Mayanja bw'otuulira bwoti buli muntu yeebise ate bayogera ekigambo nti ono musajja gundi eyalandinga ku mwezi is alleged Armstrong ku nsi yalabako the Chinese wall mbu ne muggulu yawulira yayaziina
bukiri hakko mazima era mzee Tamale kwanda mukisa gino kugamba siramu
nisikulira omusajja omukulu emyaka gyange kubanga if God
Bumaru gana kugoyogera ko
God wanted me to be a Muslim
Tamale oyogera ko Bumaru Bakari bayine myaka
ti mama wange kitaawe ya Rajabu nyina ye Hadija why didn't God send my mother to marry Muslim
kati mukama akozesezza nze nkugambe
so God did not want me to be a Muslim
no
otherwise my mother would have married
nze Tamale ngalugenda kuba otandika ku nsonga ezo mbadde nsaba nnyo kubanga oli influential abantu ngabo bagambe kona view nokugamba bagambe begemese andi nabaga akalango kange bakagaana nabakubira akalango for free ne bagaana balamu yali akayisiriza erimbwa nzibe yafuna obukadde 3 ne maganja batta kati ministry ya health if the antibiotic banwanyisa mbu I shouldn't get money may I help you nabagamba nti abanyankole bakugamba nti mama obwa akuwa ekibya ekiro olya buli mama otayinza kutta nembaga nti when President Museveni comes up with a decision I support it because Museveni is not selfish once you see Museveni coming up aba ina kyayagala okusolovinga but his problem Museveni is not a media maniac tayagala mawulire tabira nnyo ebintu bye asirika bwati n'akola ekintu ye n'asirika nabaga nti banyigirira mu State House ne bamunyabunya nnyo singa sibadde musajja w'amaanyi
nga nina nebiri bigobyo bitashiri singa nadda mu
kyalo tebina se bikole ebyo mukama yakola
kati nze nabagamba abo we are now moving. The first item was avoiding. Yes. When you look at HIV, the first item was
abstinence.
Yes. The second issue now is vaccination.
Yeah.
But drugs have variations. Variations, if you are not a manufacturer of these drugs, have a problem. When you receive donations, they have drugs in variations. In fact, let me tell you, a chatuyambi okufuna eddagala lya vaccination is a Premier League. Abazungu babadde bayinza okukkiriza eno business efe Bungereza yasigaza pound nesigaza Premier League nesigaza obwakabaka bwabwe. Anglican Church yafa.
Ebimiza y'Obungereza Premier League eri ku mwanjo nnyo
kituufu babadde tebayinza kukkiriza bisaawe kala. Premier League is a money minting project in Britain. Yes.
Okay.
They even allowed blacks.
Kituufu
kakati nze mbagamba ti Abaganda baga nti asiko obulamu tassa
omukono tassa
ne mbagamba nti n'abo abalwadde omanyi ffe mu culture yaffe twagala kwa isolating muntu. I was told nti Kasule oyo Kasule yabawe wali omuzikiti gwe
guli gwe magondo wane wandegeya
was a Catholic who was abandoned by his Catholic friends kuba yali alwadde ebigenge abasiraamu ne bamujjanjaba n'abawa ettaka eryo. When you go to Rwanda ekereziya zatema abantu bafaaza batema abantu. The only people who did not kill themselves were the Muslims.
N'Obusiraamu muzetambula Obusiraamu bulowoozeeko
kakati singa omusiraamu abadde atambula ayingira omuzikiti yingira kereziya bakwasa emiggo. Omanyi nti omusiraamu asula mu muzikiti
bulungi
a stranger naye yingira mu ekereziya
emiggo givaayo
esigala nsigale. Kakati nze mbagamba tiwadde katuze mu vaccination. Vaccination kati ate baalitse booster. Nze when Museveni gives me ekibya at night like the banyankolese that if your mother gives you something to eat in decadence, just eat. Your mother tayinza kukola kibi. I always add on ti bwogende omusawo Omuganda naga nti mama we yakuloga then you die. If your mother has turned against you then who is ani akwagala ku nsi
tewali
so
mama wakuvuddemu kati yakwagala
Magola akampa eno kampuni nagirwanirira oli omuvuka gondi kyakulaga is now here in Uganda namugamba wekweke ajja tuwa interview ngagenda.
That is okay.
The man behind this is holds a PhD in viruses and he works with Professor Nazir. Professor Nazir is the advisor of Congress on viruses and they are constructing a huge drug producing company at Matuga to produce only for American market. Naye onoonya nti ani yali agenzeeyo Magola gwe mwali muyita omubbi ye yakola kane kakati nze munnaye buli bwembeera ntambula n'akagolo kange ate nga nze munnange nina facilities kakati nze nina omukisa guli bwe guti nabagamba nti mu Baganda waliwo omuntu alina olumanyo olumanyo luli naturally born. If you want an artificial olumanyo baddira akawanga k'embwa ne bakajjamu obwongo ne babuteeka mu busoggo buno bwe bawa omwana mu kyogero kuba embwa emanya gye yabadde. Embwa buli weetuuka wali confusing efukawo so when it is coming back ejja ewunyiriza
oyayise.
Yes. Yorini yayo yegiragirira. Two, embwa yenkana n'omwana obwongo bw'omwana ow'emyaka 9. Embwa. Yes. Kakati ekyokubiri political science is a science. I can predict mu Bulaaya bakola gundi yagenda okuwangulira n'awangula because they have principles. Kakati nze mu Uganda nina bibiri have natural lumanyo ate nasoma ne political science nensoma ne psychology ebisigadde ebintu bingi mbyesomesa nzekka kati nawandika akatabo kano what divides the state and the religion. I wrote it what divides the state and the region. Bagamba nti mbuwandiki bagamba president mbu tebuliyo n'agamba mu bunooyi kana katabona kawandikadde
nga 8 April 2012
yes. What separates the region and the state? I was warning religious leaders that when should religious leaders like this man, like Niringi,
yes.
When do they attack? When do religious leaders attack a government? Nakugamba, there has always been a conflict between religious leaders and the politicians and the state organs. In my opinion, the religious leaders can only involve themselves in the politics when the politicians fail to play their role properly. Politics is like a boxing. The coach throws in the towel to save a player who is no longer able to make rational judgments. The religious leaders can come in only in the case of a political statement. But when they do, they must follow the principles of politics. Religious leaders can come in at state collapse. When the politicians fail to do their work.
No, leaders, but
yes, we know they are Ugandans. But if a Ugandan judge, you should do, the judge can even say, I will not try this case because I will be biased. So the religious leaders, I wrote about them in 2012 because I knew Mbabas was using religious leaders.
How?
At one time, as I will read, whenever Second went to Lubaga Cathedral for prayers, the then Archbishop of the Red Rwanga would ask Museveni, show us a successor. And the mining, Nakugandi Mubasiram, Ibrahim again okulaba mutabani we mudongo. Nalekanga agambye mukamwana we nti olugirwa chama. We yakoma we amugamba.
Omango kuchusi.
Namugamba nti tati agambye nti oli muchamu akugobye.
Buchiri.
Na waso okubiri namugamba nti olugirwa terera. Kakati if second year Catholic goes to Lubaga and the Archbishop of Kampala says Museveni should show us Omusika. Is dismissing his second because under the constitution second is a musika.
Nze Tamale musonga z'eddiini okola Mukama ng'atuma eri Farao agenda okununula abaana ba Isirayiri
era Katonda yakalira omutima gwa Farao nga bw'akalubiriza omutima gw'omulenzi ono nannemerako ne mukuba ne mumalawo n'akwata ssente zange nanneereka weereeka mwani mukube yansuuza omulimo nange ne musuuza project.
Kati munaddiini wayingira mu nsonga ezo abakoze
the religious leader should be like a referee. The religious leader should be like a judge. When you enter politics, look what the political principles. Nkugamba. The church should come in where the government undermines its interests, not to support the opposition.
Okay.
When do religious organizations come in, religious leaders, peddle into politics as referees? And they must follow the rules of the soccer game.
Rules of engagement by no zig.
Yes. Once you come in, you come in when the politicians, when the country threatens with the collapse. This is when religious leaders should come in. But when they come in, they should know when to go.
Before you go ahead, 12 lwaki banadini bayingira mu nsonga
some are straight dogs.
No, because abantu
when it comes to the Catholic Church, the Catholic Church issues a pastorate. All of the bishops sit under their chairman and guide the society. But when you see an individual priest is a straight dog, is suffering from rabies and must be treated like a straight dog. Yes. Are you the most important? Are you the most knowledgeable? Except in Latin America. In Latin America, the Catholic Church found itself in an awkward situation. The Catholic Church was supporting dictators.
Okay.
And as a result, because the church could not criticize dictators, the Balokole came in and the communists.
Okay.
Kakati question was asked, If we fight the dictators, whom are we helping? We are helping the communists and the Balokole to take over Latin America. Bafaza batula tubaita ba just politics.
Yep.
Nibaleta kibaita liberation theology. The Pope is a member of this organization. Justice priests, they said, don't worry about communists. Don't worry about Balokole. Let us fight the dictators and become politicians. Father Aristide of Haiti is one of them. The Pope, the current Pope, is a member of liberation theology. That the church, if let us move in and become politicians, liberation theology.
Okay.
Kakati wano, omuntu nkogamba. The church should come in where government undermines its interests, not to support the opposition. When you come in, you know when you are coming in. In order to avoid being biased, you only come in when a government is threatening your interests as religious leaders. Like when? For example, if the government is biased against another faith, like the Amin regime, where convert sessions were against non-Muslims, where some religious sects were banned in Burundi, where seminaries were abolished and prayer was restricted. This is when you can come in. Okay. Amin started well. Amin united the Muslims under Uganda Muslim Supreme Council. Why? She wanted to undermine the Kakunguru. Kakunguru helped Amin to power. Machiavelli says that a prince, if a prince wants to rule comfortably, he must destroy all of those who helped him to take power. It's only Museveni who has done it. Okay. Museveni has not killed his former comrades. Because he's intelligent, he outsmarts them. The Mbabazis, the Vestiges, the Katekayas, when they go with nothing and they come back. Yet us see. Kakati Gundi Echo Chimu nti Amin yateka Minister of Religious Affairs was not a Muslim. Amin yakwata benzi naziwa religious leaders bonna. Kyovola bana bagamba tumwebaza tayinza kudya tractors naziwawe na mirembe.
Why?
Oyo not Museveni. Museveni kasa cross. Ti emotoka za mwe yaziba weza abasilamu ne Kampala mukadde yabawo.
Yawayo.
Museveni uses universality. If you see tractors going to Kazimba by Minister of Agriculture, that's not Museveni. I attack you the following day.
Okay.
Museveni is universal. Universal primary school, universal secondary school, universality. All people must be immunized. If today COVID drugs were brought under Obote 2, what would happen? UPC supporters would receive priority. Look what? All the economic emancipation programs. The opposition benefits more than any other people. And if government pumped billions at a parish level, where is it? Or you're going to Musibe Magezi. Wait, no quarter billion is a send no seka kumuluka. Million bitano biteka kumuluka. Ngomusajja omwajja ku kyalo nagula omwenge n'abatamivu ne bebaka. Embaga y'omusajja omwetamiza abantu. Etamiza abantu. Nti ezo sente magezi bamukozesa. Bagenda musula badduke. Oyo magezi I can predict. Magezi will end up in prison.
Are you sure?
I'm telling you. You wait. Watch me. Magezi will end up in prison.
Agenda kuoleka bamisa balidenguza agenda kuyimira ekolo wali list agisome bulungi
bagamba nti Museveni musajja mugezi teyagobako n'omu baminisa ababbi bonna yabakomyawo kati agenda batira wakakiiko nga godduka wekka wagamba nti akuwa omuguwane wetu Museveni akugamba nti omukazi ow'ekibobe omusuza mu balamu be bebakuga nti obadde mu kizibu kati bonna ababbi abo except the new ones omanyi bagenda ne bakola ekyobusiru. Our politicians believe in terms of money. They believe in the media. Kati bonna babba bagula akalulu. Former ministers, all over them. Katinga Kitutu. Kitutu yapa mishandled $400 million. Gwenina katambi ne mukuba. Wano gwesina katambi.
Okay, let's go. Father Mugisha.
Anti nkubuli. Naye bubyo omuwala ono.
Ajja kuva omuleke.
Anti nze you see obwongo bwa kasobera this.
I know.
Butabuka.
Tugende mu maaso.
In such a cases where government has encroached on religious freedom, like banning seminaries, like attacking religious leaders on their purpose, like unnecessary attack. In such a cases, the church or any religious leader is free to fight back. Because if you don't kati nge Burundi bagalawo seminaries ne bagalawo kubanga e Burundi abatuusi be bali bannanyini government nga abakutu be gundi. In Rwanda, vice versa.
Okay.
The Archbishop of Kigali was a member of the executive party, Emirendi. That's why Kagame put him inside.
Okay.
He was served by the Cardinal Wamala, a delegation composed of Cardinal Wamala, Winnie Byanyima, Emmanuel Pinto, and Edward Babu. Bebamu Jamie Sako.
Okay.
Kakati, where the government, if Museveni's government is targeting seminaries, is targeting prayer hours unnecessarily. Museveni okugalawo amakyaki ku COVID yamala baita, and they agreed. Kakati
ngawo tolaba ku nsonga y'okuba oli omukungu omu yalaganya omuzikiti ogumu okuwazina. Government yawuzina okuviirayo.
That's an individual, that's a straight dog. It's a straight dog.
Okay.
But this must, in the Soviet Union, churches' doors were locked for 70 years.
Okay.
Then the church must come.
Naye
balaba era Orthodox Church evaawa. Mulasha.
Okay.
Nti America yokka failed. America is a superpower with religious leader. Kakati ekubye Anglican Church era bateekebwa abalokole. Eventually we shall have a sabalokole. Kakati nkugamba. Therefore, religious leaders can venture into politics only when the following situation prevails. Only when the following situation. One, where a bad government threatens the survival of the churches or religious interests. In China, the Catholic Church is controlled by the state, the Communist Party, and is the state that appoints. There is a Catholic Church in China. But it is controlled by the state. The state appoints cardinals and bishops.
State
and they are not recognized by the Vatican. The Communist Party in China appoints bishops and cardinals, but they are investigating. They have sent. China is investigating how religion can work. They are sending a delegation. Me, I'm informed.
Okay.
Bishops and cardinals without the consent of the Vatican. Also, in countries like the former communist countries, where seminaries had been locked and closed, as well as Papa John Paul II came from Poland.
Okay. Poland
was under the total control of the communists. But how did Papa John Paul II come from a communist country? Okay. Mikhail Gorbachev rose to the level of Secretary General of the Communist Party, but was a believer.
Okay.
Yali asoma. Balima batya KGB yalimeti omutegeera nti asoma. This is God's power.
Okay.
Number two, where religious leaders are targeted and killed, if the situation is allowed to continue and consolidate itself, this will eventually result into the dysfunction of the church or religious groups. Therefore, under such situations, the religious leaders must fight back and remove the bad government. Don't attack a government that has not attacked you.
Mzee Tamale, wanatufika bashekhe bafembusira.
Yes.
Report zikanye kubanti zivayo. Badali ndibanji bafude. Ngabalika kabuza.
Abasiramu bwe bafa bakwataka abakristayo. Oba abasiramu.
Era bakwata abasiramu banafi. Nega report zikanye.
Banga nze nabategeera nabagamba. Ti abasiramu bawa nagenda Southern Sudan 206. I predicted they will kill you there. Nemba gamba ti abasiramu bawa bagenda battanyo lwaki. Abasiramu bawa nabasinga obungi baganda. Bafere.
Dikanawe.
Yes.
Mzee Tamale kishinene.
Ani nkubuulira nti omuganda yalema okunyikira mu ddiini. Omusheeka akulira abakulu b'ebika. Omukulu w'ekika omusiraamu gyali. ne bamala okuteekawo embugo zaabwe n'okusamira najja n'alayirula abalongo. Muganda has two religions. Ne bw'abaanira bakuba ne bafaaza babazzaako ewaabwe ne faaza asika oza ne Kardinali Wamala yasikira jjajja Kyamera. Omanyi Kardinali Wamala is a crusader of my mother.
Okay.
Kardinali Wamala you see there. Kakati nze nabaga nti Al-Qaeda, when the presence of Al-Qaeda, when you study criminality and terrorism, when you see Islamic clerics, handsome men with the newly constructed mosques, Al-Qaeda cell is there. Kakati Al-Qaeda, and if you study non-state actor, it does not have a court of law, does not have a judicial. You cheat them, they kill you. Okay. Al-Qaeda is brutal. Bogenda no percent zaayo no bivaako bakutta. Era you can 90% I suspect the Muslims who are dying here were killed by Al-Qaeda.
But government has never given us a report.
And bwe baakwata Kamuga bamuvunaana ki? Terrorism is a soft offense. Was Kamuga tried bamuvunaana mada. Lwaki ono omukazi Gonde oye yafa nga bamuwadde sente miliyoni 6 n'azigaana. Kagezi Kabushenga n'akeera ku makya n'agamba I've launched a fund to help Kagezi's children. Wanudde Kabushenga will be investigated and Kulubya because there is a strong bond between criminals and the media.
Okay.
Gonde ne bakuba ekizimbe ky'Emakerere ne bakyokya. Kabushenga n'akuba mutwe. Chinese offer to construct. Has it ever been constructed? And when you ask Miso can tell you who are behind
the burning,
the destruction of that building.
Okay.
It had land fires.
But before you go ahead, twogedde ku nsonga y'abaseeka ab'abusiraamu ne batulondeko ne badini abalala bafudde baliko akabuuza ne bakristaayo ne bagamba kuliko akabuuza enfa yaabwe mysterious naye tewali gavumenti tevudde kuba nti era kyekola
okyola bwe yereetedde ebizibu nti abuuliriza ono when I looked at the conduct of the family members of this man, I suspect the children were composed. We want hospitals, we want jobs in northern Uganda. What do you talk at your father's
funeral?
You can even determine a widow who is shocked.
Yes.
The Baganda have a proverb nti omukazi atakabidde ebba tumuyita wakiwamma. People who don't shed tears wakiwamma. Mukagundi nga takabye nga bafudde wakiwamma. Suspicious tubayita bakiwamma. Suspicious widows, we call them the Chiwamma widows in Uganda.
Okay.
The girls were composed.
Waliwo akabuuza awo tugende mu maaso
nkugamba. Number 2, when the government fails to protect its citizens, this means that the state has abdicated its responsibilities and is no longer state.
Yes.
So the organized groups like the churches can come in to guide society. This is even when the UN comes in, like in Congo, because a state must protect its territory, a state must control coercive forces. Once the state abdicates its responsibilities, then other people, other organized groups come in to fill the vacuum.
Manalini bavaayo ku ezo ngebadde mu ggwanga Uganda. State yafinga obadde politika
bannansi.
Buliza muzeta
where has government abdicated
babadde mu safe houses ne babonabonyezebwa abantu abakyala battiddwa bijambi yabizze abantu state eremereddwa.
No. Has it?
No, state eremereddwa muzeta.
That's one aspect. A failed state cannot control its territory. Our borders are secure.
But
a failed state cannot function. A failed state cannot have a functioning parliament, a vibrant parliament. These are criminals who have taken advantage.
Nena nga mulimu gwa state okuba nti protecting bannansi baayo.
Era ngenda kubulya ku Nanta pakati nkugamba nti ba religious leaders overestimate themselves. Nakuwandikira one limits of religious leaders.
Okay.
In when? Because I looked at Niringiye, I looked at Father Gaetano, and I looked at when the government, Museveni had just taken government, the Catholic Church came up to fight him. Why? Because communism is the biggest enemy of the Catholic Church.
Okay.
Kakati teaching ya Museveni basomesanga nga communist. So the Catholic Church had to take on. But later Museveni explained this his policies and they became close friends of Cardinal Sobuga, who donated even iron sheet, bricks kuzimba nyumba ya president. Yes.
Okay.
We have hosted 2 popes.
Yeah.
But hosted 1. We have hosted all of international conferences. For you were young.
Yeah.
The MAC agreement was negotiated by who? Dr. Nassif. Ukuleta bachi Bukundi. The Brain. Dr. Kisule. Ahmad Muhammad. Abasiramu balina majirisi ulama.
Yes.
Olukiiko lw'abamanyi.
Babamanyi bwekiri.
Yes. Majirisi ulama.
Nze Tamale. Gisiya ko wakigamba siramu ka y'obusiramu.
Kagati nkugamba. Nakugambye wano. Kyembadde okunyonyola. In Latin America, the old generation of bishops decided to compromise with the Latin American dictators for fear that their removal would surrender Latin America to the communists. Since the governments were financed by America, the opposition groups were getting funds from the communist world. Like in the Philippines example, Philippines waliyo funds kardinali nga wamaanyi bamuyita Sini yavaayo n'akunga abantu bagere. In fact kanche babuulire religious leaders bagenda ne beekeza regulating where religious leaders can lead change,
can cause change.
Yes. Cardinal Sin was a son of immigrant parents who settled in the Philippines in the 40s. In spite of his foreign ancestry, however, Sin joined the seminary and later was ordained cardinal. By the time Sin became cardinal of Manila and Archbishop of Manila, Philippines was under dictator Ferdinand Marcos.
Okay.
This was a time when the Cold War was coming to an end and the importance of dictators like Mobutu, Marcos to America was declining. The United States had established military bases in the Philippines. The Philippines were opposed to turning their country into a garrison like the Egyptians under Nasser. However, the American strategists wanted to maintain Marcos in power in spite of his questionable democratic credentials. With the democratic wave of the early 80s, Marcos became a victim. He lost the massive financial support from the USA government. The opposition under Aquino was weak and fragmented. Aquino was forced into exile in USA. However, all of the opposition groups got united under Cardinal Sin, determined to overthrow Marcos. Marcos was forced to make reforms and to allow Aquino to return home to the Philippines. He was assassinated at Manila International Airport. His assassination sparked off a massive mass reaction similar to the recent Arab revolutions witnessed recently. Marcos was besieged in his state house and the soldiers joined the masses. His Air Force pilots bombed his state house compound. He was saved by American Marines who whisked him from Manila to USA. However, he used his massive financial resources to destabilize the country. He engineered coup attempts on almost a daily basis. The popularity of Cardinal Sin soured. However, when the Filipinos decided to vote General Ramos, a former army commander under Marcos, Cardinal Sin wanted to dictate to them who to vote. They rejected and opposed him. The masses overwhelmingly voted for General Ramos. They also rejected another directive not to elect a gambler, Joseph Estrada. Also, in Latin America, the old generation of bishops decided to compromise with the Latin American dictators for fear that their removal would surrender Latin America to the communists. Since the government were financed by America, the opposition groups were getting funds from the communist world. Like in the Philippines, example above, the people of Latin America refused to accept the betrayal, and as a result, the Catholic Church in Latin America split into 2 groups. The younger priests developed what came to be known as the liberation theology, which allowed the Catholic priests to lead political revolutions against dictators. One of the leading liberation theologists was Reverend Father Aristide of Haiti and the current Pope. Are these people, are they telling us that the Catholic Church, with the 4 archdioceses, which has hosted the Pope, 2 popes,
twice here
in this government, we have hosted the Commonwealth, we have hosted all of the international conferences, are these straight dogs in the form of priests, do they believe that they are more knowledgeable than the Catholic bishops? If this government is attacking the Catholic Church, this would be reflected in the pastoral letter of the Catholic bishops. So in absence of a stronger pastoral letter from Uganda Catholic bishops, then it means these people, like this priest Mugisha, is a straight dog that must be handled mercilessly.
Muzee Tamale, banadini nga banadini bwabwe nabo baba banansi nga